Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on Deborah Kobylt Live. I've got a friend and my OBGYN in studio with me today, Dr. Cheryl Ross. Thanks for being here.
Love it here.
Love it here, too. So glad that you're here to talk about your second book, She-ology, the She-quel. Very chic title, actually.
Thank you.
And it's all about women's health. And every question and any question you have about women's health, and particularly down in there, this book answers it. Your first book, She-ology, also answers it. But this one, if no matter what question I had, there was a moment for it.
I love hearing that.
Yeah, it was great.
I love it.
So let's get into it. Why part 2, Doctor? Why She-ology, the She-quel?
You know, She-ology started the Vagina Revolution, and there was so much more to talk about. I was getting emails, texts, phone calls from people all over the world.
About what in particular? What do people really want to know? What's the number one question people ask you?
Oh, the vagina. Is it self-cleaning?
It's not an oven, people. Come on.
No.
You've got to clean it. Of course you've got to clean down there. Right?
You know, I always say it's like a self-cleaning oven, right? But you still have to clean the stovetop.
You do. You've got to do that. That's your number one. That's very, very interesting.
That's
you know what's funny? We had a party for your book launch, the first one, She-ology.
Yes.
And I'll never forget that because we had posters all over the house. And I have 3 boys. And they came downstairs. They're like, what is going on? And they ran out the door. But it was an opportunity for me to explain to them about women, about what women go through, and about what we go through when we have kids. And they actually took a moment to listen. So I needed you to know that.
Yeah.
You know, from horror, they were actually interested.
Yeah.
So I say that because it's not just for women.
Well, it's true. I mean, look, some people call me the Vagina Whisperer, the VJJ doc, Doctor to the Stars. My 3 boys.
Just 3 also.
Yeah, they call me embarrassing. So there you go.
Why is
But
it?
they
Mine
can
do.
say vagina, no problem.
Yeah, and they will thank you one day.
They do.
They really will.
As their girlfriends, too.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, without a doubt. So you've appeared in every possible magazine. You've been on many television shows, from Good Morning America, Inside Edition, and there's a project that's in the works with Ellen Digital, right?
Yes.
And that is called Lady Parts 2020. I mean, there's nobody better than Ellen to put something like this together, right?
Exactly. We're excited.
Yeah, so hopeful that happens. So let's talk a little bit about She-ology. I would almost ask where you want to start, but I think I'm going to start where I want to start. What about that?
Absolutely. It's your show.
I like you talk about protecting yourself against STDs, thyroid dysfunction, perimenopause, pregnancy and weight gain, all this, yeast and bladder infections. Sorry, everybody, but it's true, and this is what happens to us. When people walk into your office, what's something that they are concerned with mostly today? STDs, are they not on the rise?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the age group, right? But under 40 STDs for sure, getting checked, STIs as we call it. Over 40 is hormonal imbalance, really common. Perimenopause, menopause, those are just chaotic cycles for women that we just talk about all day long.
Let's talk about that then. Let's talk about what happens to a person in perimenopause. What are some of the symptoms? Because I think as you're going through it, you don't even know what you're going through. You're like, why am I sweating? Turn the heat down, right?
Exactly.
You may be having a horrible mood and you're thinking, wow, what a lousy day. But it really can all be your hormones, right?
Exactly. Especially perimenopause, because that's sort of 10 years before menopause. A lot's going on. Hot flashes, insomnia, night sweats, depression, heart palpitations, vaginal dryness, right? The list continues. Low sex drive for all you women. And your blood work's normal. Your blood work is completely normal. So the doctor's like, hey, you're fine, you're good.
See?
But what's happening is perimenopause. So it's really a common time for women to be confused. And there's stuff you can do about it. And that's really
Like what?
Well, for one thing, we acknowledge it to start. Like we say, this is what's happening. Your hormones are really imbalanced because your ovaries, they're not working anymore. They're not working well. There's a lot of lifestyle changes. Exercise is going to be helpful. Acupuncture, yoga, mindfulness is helpful for some of the emotional side effects.
And kindness from your partner,
Oh, definitely.
Hopefully, if you have a male partner, that they're kind and they understand this,
Exactly.
what you're going through, and help you through it, right? Because that can be it can be a difficult time for everybody, and we all go through it. Sorry, but we can't stay 25 forever.
Yeah,
right.
It's true, and I mean, communication is just important in any problem women are having, and especially all the sensitive issues, hormonal changes, sexual issues. I mean, it's just you have to have good communication with your partner, or you're just not going to feel validated, and you're not going to get better.
What do women say when they come in there? Is that an issue sometimes? That sometimes their partner doesn't understand? I mean, I think.
All the time. All the time. I mean, first of all, it depends what the issue is. But the more touchy ones, anything sex-related, first of all, we're suppressing, we're not talking about it. And that's really a huge problem. I mean,
Which is why it's great that you wrote the book.
Yeah, I mean, I have a chapter in here called the Take Charge V, because it's empowering women, to talk about their bodies, take charge, demand what they want in bed. And we're just not doing it. Culturally, we're just not been trained.
Look, we've been muzzled for so long. I think that's why. We've been used to saying nothing. I mean, as you know this, there was a time that men didn't even go into the delivery room. I mean, they showed up. There was a baby in the woman's hand, and she was filled with makeup and just looked lovely as though nothing happened. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we've come a long way, but we have to come a lot further. But a book like this really helps us to understand, because it's also written with some humor. A lot of common sense, and it's really kind of easy to go through, which is why I loved it so much.
And that was the intent. I mean, the truth is, when women's legs are in stirrups, the conversation really begins. That's when I hear everything, and I had to write it down. I was like, this is beyond our bodies, ourselves. This is what is happening with the porn industry, with sort of the sexual revolution, the Me Too movement, and just so many topics that we don't address. And that's what I was doing.
I'm glad that you're breaking down these barriers, because it shouldn't be so taboo. This is my body, how it's born as a female, and then the male has his, and they really do come together. So I'll understand yours, you understand mine.
It's so true. And it begins in childhood. I mean, it begins with moms, how they talk to their daughters. If you're an aunt or a godmother, you have to start this movement. It's grassroots movement of teaching young women not to be ashamed, not to be embarrassed, embrace themselves, embrace their sexuality. So we have a lot of work to do to make this cultural change.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go a little bit. So we talked a little bit about perimenopause. Let's talk about pregnancy and weight gain and stretch marks and sleeping. So now we're going to go probably to the folks who are under 40, right?
Not always, Deb.
Yeah, that's true.
Not always. Not
that
in this day and
very true.
age.
I agree with you. But I remember when I was sleeping when I was pregnant, and I would be laying on my back, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night and go, he's got no water. I was afraid because everything goes off to the side, and I'd be shaking him to wake him up, which is ridiculous. But what's the best sort of position to sleep? Can you sleep? What are some...
Pregnancy's hard. It's a hormonal cycle that really it's not discussed enough, because you're just so happy to be pregnant that you're afraid to complain. You're carrying this being,
a human.
Totally. It's the most exciting adventure of your life usually, but you have a lot of aches and pains, and sleeping, you have to sleep on your left and your right.
Which is impossible, because in the middle of the night, there's nobody tapping on you going, excuse me, you just rolled over. That's hard.
Well,
right?
It's usually okay.
Yeah,
I mean, as long as you're not consciously on your back after 24 weeks, you should be fine. But it's hard, and you have to take care of yourself. You have to get good sleep and eat well and not gain too much weight and not gain too little weight. So again, you have to educate yourself and talk to your OB, and hopefully find all the answers to your questions.
Right. I remember when I was pregnant, I always craved cheeseburgers. And people who know me know I don't really meat very often. And I just couldn't get enough of them. I would stop at roadsides, terrible to say, in New Jersey and just eat. Therefore, I gained way too much. And as much as they tell you, don't do that, what are you going to do when you're hysterical and you've got to have a cheeseburger? It's tough, right?
You have it. You have that cheeseburger. You just only have one.
Yeah.
At a time.
Yeah. But that's tough. And then stretch marks. I know that's an issue. I didn't get those, thank God. That's the one thing I didn't have.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, if your mom had them, They're genetic.
It is a genetic
There's not many creams that you can use, ladies, that are gonna get rid of those stretch marks. It's really true. So if your mom had them, chances are you're gonna get them. And I think, listen, you keep your skin moisturized anyway. It's really important. Your skin gets drier in pregnancy. You just have to, I think working out's so important. It's good for the baby too. So exercising should be on your list.
Just simple
Walking
enough.
is a great exercise.
Yeah, I mean, for me, what kept my skin really good, I loved shea butter. Simple and very reasonable.
Yep.
And olive oil. I still use olive oil. I actually slather it all over me, my face, my neck.
Yeah.
Those are my two products. I didn't need anything expensive.
Yeah.
But that helps.
Well, it's true. And extra virgin coconut oil is like the best, and it's great for sex. It's a great lubricant.
Let's talk about that. Wait a minute. Extra virgin coconut oil for sex. Embellish on that a little bit.
Yeah, well, listen, if I had to take one item on a desert island, it would be extra virgin coconut oil.
Multi-purpose.
Because it pretty much is from head to toe. It's a great hydrator, right? So one of the things I always talk about is that women should treat their lady parts, their vulva and vagina, like their face. The same routine. I've been saying this for years. Treat it like your face. You want to hydrate, moisturize, and use special products.
Okay, stop. My face can get dry, so I will, as I said, put lots of olive oil there. Mm-hmm. The other area does not get dry, so why would I want to do that and treat it the same? Not to me. Sorry, Matt.
A lot of Matt's going to learn a thing or two.
Yes.
A lot of women have dry labia. Whether you're shaving, you're working out at the gym, they have hair follicles, glands, and just like any area, there's sweat. So dryness is common. So if you soak in a bath, here's the tip: 20 minutes, 3 times a week with extra virgin coconut oil. It hydrates the labia so well, and you'll have less itching. Right? Dry skin causes itching.
Yeah.
And just because you have an itch, another myth, it doesn't mean you have a yeast infection. So that's the other thing. It's just part of the routine. And for lube inside the vagina, it is a great moisturizer and
coconut
a great
oil.
Yeah, it's really good.
Wow.
Guys like it too. Feels good on the clitoris. Guys like it on their penis. It's a win-win.
Suddenly, the stock prices of coconut oil, doctor, are going to go
telling
through the roof.
you, it's
we need
really
some
good.
good news with the stock market. So everybody, go out there and buy your coconut oil. You mentioned yeast infection, bladder infections. Can we go down both of those? Because not to get personal, I'm always calling. I think I have a bladder infection.
Yeah.
Why? Why are some people more prone to that and the yeast infection?
Well, vagina is a sensitive gal. She really is. So I have a chapter in my She-quel called the Off-Track V, and it talks about UTI versus interstitial cystitis, because just because you have frequency of urination or pain with urination doesn't mean you have a true infection, but you can. The tube that leaves the bladder is really short compared to men, the urethra.
Right.
So it's more prone to bacteria from the rectum, from wiping. It's, again, you want to
so they always say
practice
from the front to the back.
wiping. Exactly. So we're just more prone to UTIs. That's the main reason. And the vagina, with its pH balance, it likes to be acidic. So all those foot soldiers that are protecting the vagina, if there's an imbalance from some of those feminine hygiene products that you shouldn't use, that have too much fragrance in it, or things that are going to disrupt that, can cause yeast. So it's very common.
What's yeast? Because even just hearing that, I remember when I first heard that when I was a teenager, it's like, well, wait a minute. Let's face it, everything becomes so itchy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
To the point where it's like someone poured itching powder all over you,
Exactly.
inside and out. What do you do?
Well, I mean, look, yeast is kind of classic in that itching, cottage cheese discharge, and it's swelling and discomfort. I mean, it's pretty noticeable. So when there's that imbalance, yeast overgrows, and that's not unusual. There's a medication for it, diflucan, which treats it, and there's anti-itch cream. So those are some of the things you have to do, and it will take care of it.
Is there a reason why a person gets that more so than others? Does it have anything to do with hygiene or sweating, or because I'm really not sure, and I know you answer.
Yeah. Well, in my first book, I have a chapter called The Cranky V.
Yeah.
And it talks a lot about, what offsets that pH balance, because the vagina is complicated. She's complicated.
We grow people there.
There's a perfect balance. It's a pH sensitive. So things that disrupt it, there's many, many things. They tend to be a lot of our our daily routines of the hygiene that you don't want to use. But even a new partner, for example, can cause, introduce new bacteria, can cause an overgrowth of bacteria, and bacteria called Gardnerella is another really common. So when people have itching or discharge, they go to CVS, they get their Monostat, they put it in, and the vagina burns because it's not yeast. In fact, it's bacterial. So you have to be sort of careful with that, and that's why you go to the doctor to get cultured. But
I see.
Yeah.
Can that develop into something more serious or no?
Well, it can just be really uncomfortable, in that setting, just your regular Gardnerella, not PID, which is pelvic inflammatory disease, but it can get in there and it can be really uncomfortable, be painful with sex. So new partners are usually a common cause of a UTI and a recent infection.
Interesting. Let's get into that a little bit about STDs, because you write quite a bit about STDs, how to keep yourself safe. What would you want to tell us about that?
I think the number one myth that I hear from women all the time is, my boyfriend got tested for STIs, sexually transmitted infections, as we like to call them, and he's negative, so he doesn't want to wear a condom, or he doesnn't need to wear a condom. So we're allowing men to say that and say no worries, but we know that HPV, right? HPV is probably the most common STI out there.
Right.
And no symptoms. Men aren't tested for it like women. We get our PAPs. We can test for it. Men can't. So they're having sex without a condom, and there you go.
And a lot of older men, particularly, they weren't vaccinated for that either, right?
Exactly.
Because the younger men now, they were. I don't know if your sons were, but mine were.
Yes.
So a series of 3 shots, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of the older guys didn't get that. But you're right, a condom, right? Especially if you don't know a person.
I just cannot talk more about safe sex. And, safe sex is wearing a condom during vaginal sex, anal sex, and oral sex. So I always ask my patients, when you're giving head to your boyfriend, is you making him wear a condom? And 100% say no.
Really?
And when they give oral sex to their, to the female, they should be using a dental dam. Well, the truth is that's not happening. And even in the gay community, the lesbian community, we don't see that happening. But in a perfect world, that's what you would do. It's just, again, we're not practicing safe sex.
It's also a little hard to do, I have to admit, but you're supposed to do it.
Well, the reason being is, we're seeing a decrease of cervical cancers now, but we're seeing an increase, as it relates to HPV, an increase in cancers of the throat from getting oral sex, especially in the gay community, and anal sex. Because there's not, the gay population has pap smears for the anus, but the straight doesn't. And there's really no oral pap smear yet. So we're seeing HPV shift for where it likes to live and how we're seeing that negative effect.
That's interesting. So what should you be putting on your mouth if you're having oral sex?
Well,
female to female, male to female, what should you be putting
in a perfect world, you would have, if it's in a heterosexual relationship, you would have the male wear a condom during oral sex.
Right.
And if the man is giving the female oral sex, they'd be using a dental dam. Now,
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, so
what's a dental dam?
Dental dam is a sort of a square of a latex, almost like a rectangle that goes over the vagina, the outside the labia and the clitoral area, and that's how you give oral sex.
I can understand why people aren't doing it as much. It's like, wait, I got to get my dental dam.
It's not sexy. Yeah. It's not sexy, but being protective of STIs is very sexy.
I agree. I agree with you.
But the other thing is the fastest growing population of recipients of STIs is women and men over 45 for the same reason. And the truth is, this group of women, they're like, well, I can't get pregnant, and they're
in it for the fun.
Especially the divorce. I have a divorce V in my my first book, and it talks about that this group of men and women aren't at all practicing safe sex. Very few.
They're just going out and doing their thing, but it's like, whoa, hold on.
That's right. They're on Match.com. They're getting the winks. They're getting the flirts. They're going to meet their guy or girl, and it's just they're not practicing safe sex. So this is a population that I would really love to think about getting just more education on practicing it.
You're in the room with these women. How are you going to get into their heads to tell them that? You know what I'm saying? Like, how can you scare them enough, if you will? It's almost like you need to be scared.
Listen, I like to educate. I love to educate women. Culturally, for years, women just aren't given the right tools, right? If the average doctor spends 7.5 minutes with their patient, how in the world are you going to talk about some of these issues? I mean, that are sensitive issues that may take time to talk about.
It's right here. It's true.
Listen, I think so. I mean, I'm so proud of these books because I think it's part of this Vagina Revolution, but it's the metaphor for embracing our health, embracing our bodies, asking those hard, challenging questions, and really the courageous conversations have to be had.
It's funny. I grew up in a Catholic household, not particularly religious, but it was a Catholic household. That V word was something we didn't even say, to the point where sometimes I couldn't barely even say the word vagina because it was just a taboo word. I mean, it was kind of like I was supposed to wear a chastity belt until the day I got married. Didn't happen. But, so yeah, it's a revolution.
Yeah.
And just for someone like me, and I'm thinking we've come a long way. And people like you, doctors like you, professionals like you, have made it so okay to talk about our vaginas because let's talk about that. It's a pleasure place, but it's designed that way because we give birth. We bring human beings into the world through that. What a beautiful thing, right? So let's protect it. Yeah, let's just keep it clean. Let's just protect it.
The vagina is really powerful, and it's a metaphor for yourself and how you express yourself. And we shouldn't be shameful. We shouldn't be embarrassed of any questions, and especially as it relates to sex. And I talk a lot about how women have to take charge of their sexual well-being and sexual happiness.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Are you talking, we were talking masturbation in the book.
Yes.
In terms of talking to your partner about what you want. Do you find sometimes that the younger women are more prone to be able to do that with their male partners as opposed to the older ones?
Absolutely. I mean, the Gen X, millennials, they're pretty out there.
Good for them.
And they do own it more. I mean, I see that trend. It's the women over 30, 40, 50. And 10 to 20% of women have never had an orgasm. That's a lot.
Stop. Why? Please explain this to me. Why?
Well, first of all, masturbation, right? So you can't have your first sexual experience should be with yourself. 95% of men masturbate. Well, 89 of women.
What's wrong with the other 5%? What's going on? No, I'm serious. We're talking men here. It's like, wow.
I don't know.
Not that there's anything wrong. I didn't mean that, but wow.
So you have, your first sexual experience should be with yourself. You have to not have any religious issues surrounding it, or your, issues you hear from your mother or your grandmother or your aunt about how you shouldn't be touching yourself down there. It's not okay. It's just for having kids. So we are influenced by those around us.
I remember being 12. And my mom would come into my room I could never really fall asleep. God knows what I was thinking about. And she'd always be knocking on the door. Excuse me. And now I know why she did this. She'd say, put your hands above the covers.
Wow.
And I would think, why do you care how I'm sleeping? But now I get it.
Yeah.
She was one of those people, very strict Italian Catholic, right? And she was probably wondering what I was doing. In the meantime, I was just trying to go to sleep.
Right. You had no idea.
I didn't even know what she was thinking. But
hopefully you started masturbating.
Not till I was much older.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I had sex even first. That was first. Isn't that funny?
Well, you can't rely on...
Because let's face it, I come from a family that didn't even talk about it. You know what I mean?
And you and a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, this is so common. So we're shamed, or at least a lot of the older women have been. And
I was not shamed. I just didn't talk about it. But yeah, I know what you're saying.
But it's, we are who our friendly circles are. We are, we're influenced so much by others. And it's, if you don't know your own roadmap for sexual pleasure, how are you going to explain it to your partner?
What's the normal amount? I hate to use the word normal, but whatever. That typical amount, that a female, let's say a younger female and then a middle-aged and older female masturbate.
Yeah.
Well, that you suggest. Perhaps you give suggestions on this.
Listen, I think it's, a lot of women do it nightly to go to sleep because having an orgasm is, there's so many benefits.
That's your melatonin. Yeah.
Well, it's so good for your it feels, first of all, it feels really great, but it's good just for your ability to relax and de-stress and to sleep, to give yourself some enjoyment, right? Why not? It's important. It's good for your heart. It's, physically good for your soul.
Notice I have look at my pen, and it's almost like I have a cigarette as we're talking about it. I'm noticing that. I'm like, wait a minute, what am I doing here? It's like
That's right. Hey, it's a good thing.
Why not? Here's another one. I've talked about this with my girlfriend. What's like the length of time? I was in a group with some women. They're like, it's forever. I fall asleep first. Is there any like rule to that? Masturbation.
Oh, well, there's no endpoint. Is that what you mean? There's no endpoint.
Some women are still don't quite know what they're doing and how to do it.
Well, I think it's exploration. I think the clitoris, with all its 8,000 nerves of glory, more so than the penis, has almost half of that. With the proper stimulation, you will get it excited, and you'll sort of go into those different phases. But you need patience and time, and just know the average is 20 minutes to have an orgasm. For men, it's 5.
Yeah.
Women, 20.
So let's talk about orgasm for a woman during sexual intercourse.
Yes.
How? Because a lot of women don't.
Yes.
And how do you achieve that for those who can't?
Yeah, first of all, only 25% of women can have an orgasm during vaginal penetration with the penis, and no touching of the clitoris. So that could be the G-spot being stimulated. A lot of women can have an orgasm without even touching their clitoris, right? So that's the lucky handful, but it can happen.
Lucky genetics.
So 25% can have an orgasm with vaginal penetration, but 75% need the clitoris to be stimulated. So while, let's say, if you're on top during during having vaginal penetration with your male partner, maybe you're touching your clitoris, maybe he's touching it, maybe you bring a vibrator. I'm all for vibrators. That makes orgasms very easy. I think every girl, every woman should have one.
Do you recommend any in particular?
Well, the ultimate wand that I use a lot, Cal Exotics, is one of my favorite because it feels really soft. There is the magic wand that is like a lawnmower, strong and fast.
Oh my God! Okay.
The lawnmower engine, I should say. It gets the job done.
Lawnmower, you'll get groomed along the way too. It sounds like. Honestly, I've never heard of any vibrator described as a lawnmower.
Well,
it's like
the engine's strong. The ultimate wand, though, I like because it just feels softer on the skin. It has different variations, and it's very easy to put in your suitcase.
Oh, there you go.
Travel friendly.
Okay. I also want to talk a little bit about, I do want to talk about the trans community. I also want to talk about the gay community. Can we talk a little bit about you and your life first?
Sure,
Let's take a little bit of break from the book. Where were you raised? And you have a brother, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I was raised in Palos Verdes.
For those of you watching from outside of California.
Palos Verdes, California.
Yeah, a little south of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
What a golden place to be raised.
It was really great. It was beautiful. I feel very lucky. My parents were amazing. All the greatest parts of me are from them. My dad was a urologist.
Lovely people.
Dad
best. Sadly passed away.
Yeah, pancreatic, awful cancer. Yeah.
Beautiful people, so supportive of you.
Thank you. I feel lucky every day. Yeah. But, I used to go on rounds with my dad to the hospital because he was a urologist. He was the male version of what I do. We go.
Isn't that interesting? You're right.
Yeah. And yeah, I'd go, and my brother and my sister and we'd go to hang out in the doctor's lounge. We eat jelly donuts, and that was a big draw, was going to the doctor's lounge. But really, what it was is he had such a way with patients.
He did. That's why you're probably like the way you
are. He's so sweet, and he touched, and I would remember, I will never forget the way he would put his hand on their shoulder, and just he was just there, and I think they and him, they just had a really great relationship and related well. So I thought, I want to do that.
Well, you were called, remind me, who called you? You have a reputation as being one of the most compassionate doctors. Honestly, you could be sitting with you in the examination room and you almost forget there's anybody else there in the office waiting to be seen. You're very compassionate.
Thank you.
You don't rush people. It's actually a beautiful thing because I personally am frightened to go to the doctor. That's who I am. and you always sort of let people feel very relaxed. And I
Thank
think
you.
that comes from who you are.
Thank you.
And clearly through your dad, right?
Yeah.
And your mom too, because your mom is a great.
Yeah,
great
I'm very, very lucky. And I love what I do too. And I see the need for conversation.
and compassion in medicine. That's got to go together, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Brother and sister.
Yeah, so my brother, they were all doctors.
Wow.
Yeah, and my sister passed away a few years ago. My brother is, he's kind of retired, and but we were all just very
Close.
blessed and
Close.
very close. And every day is a blessing.
You know, it's neat when you go to your book signings, the family's all there, right? I've met your brother, I knew your parents. So I love that. It
Thank
just
you.
makes you feel even closer to the entire community of what you're doing. And you are married. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, 16 years with my wife. Peggy.
Wife. I love this. Peggy.
Yeah.
Another beautiful soul.
Oh, so lucky.
She's a teacher.
She's a principal.
A principal.
Yeah, and Watts. And I feel very blessed. I found my soulmate and someone that I'm very proud to be with. I have 3 boys, 3 adult boys. I was married to a man the first go around. So
Did you know when you were married to him that you were gay, or did he know, or how did that happen?
No. I think I was fluid with my sexuality. And I had a little more pressure to be with a Jewish Jewish doctor, which worked out. I mean, no, I met him in medical school, and we got married, and we had 3 boys together.
Amazing sons. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And it just wasn't the right match for me. And I had been with a woman before, and it wasn't really set up that way to be, but it just sort of evolved.
Yeah.
So I feel very lucky, and I think it's really important to live your truth. And
So much today,
Yeah.
more than ever, to live your truth. I love to study history, and I often wonder, when did it become that you couldn't live your truth and you had to live a certain way and you had to marry someone of the opposite sex? I don't think it was always that way. When I study back in the Roman times, for example, I may be wrong. I didn't live them, but I've read enough about it, right?
Yeah.
Was it religion?
I think it was a lot of that. I mean, I think the Bible and how we were raised, man and a woman, was really everything. Procreation.
Yeah.
We were all influenced by that. And I think we've taken a huge step forward with how we're now living our lives. It's an easier time to be living your true self as far as being gay.
Let's hope.
Yeah, and
Certainly in this country, there's still plenty of places where it is not.
yeah,
Right?
that's true. No, I feel lucky living in California.
We do.
And I think the gay community needs role models to show other gay, younger girls and boys that you can live a very happy and successful and inclusive life.
Not to get political, but this is why Mayor Pete was my guy. First of all, I found him to be young, which I thought was a great thing. I didn't find that to be a liability at all. I thought, good, he'll have some fresh ideas. And if in fact he didn't have experience, he seemed bright enough that he would learn on the job. Am I right?
Yeah, no,
But this
it's
is just me.
exciting. Yeah.
But the fact that he had a husband, I was pushing for him all the way. So hopefully his career he's got a long career ahead of him. But how great would it be if the day came where if we saw a woman as president or a gay person as president, right? So
it's
we're
going to
pushing
happen.
it, right?
It's definitely going to happen. But it's exciting that it can happen, at least
Beautiful thing.
baby steps. So we're hopefully going to see that soon.
So you have a chapter in the book, the trans V, right?
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
No better than you to describe what about this.
Well, I know for me, I mean, I felt like I really wanted to learn more about the transgender community, being part of the community, being part of the LGBTQ community, community. I needed to learn more. Doctors don't learn enough about this population that's 2 to 5% of our population. And I had a few patients myself, and I really needed to learn how to best treat them myself. And I just know that not just my colleagues, but everyone had questions.
Let's talk about what is a trans person. Can you describe for us? 'Cause a lot of people are like, wait, what
Yeah.
is that? Is that a cross-dresser? What are we talking?
Yeah, I mean, so that's exactly. So I what I have in here is I have some definitions that I really
Would you? Yeah, let's read from it.
I like to.
Let me see. That would be page 237.
It's
of your own book, 237.
No, because one of the things that I had to do in this is I made a whole list of what definitions they were.
Go ahead.
Trans, so just when I read it, it's umbrella term for someone whose gender identity is not congruent with their sex assigned at birth.
As how they were assigned. How does that happen to
Yeah.
a person? Do you think it's just chromosomes, or because a lot of people say, oh, it's in their head, and I said, no, it's not.
Yeah, this is a genetic. I am sure there's definitely a genetic cause. I mean, it's if you know of a 5 or 6 year old that's assigned at birth, a male or female, but then they want to be the opposite gender. There's something going on. That's not that they're being influenced by their parents or by their neighbors. This is just a very biological happening that has nothing to do with anything more than just their destiny. And I think was part of it, because this gender identity refers to sort of how the person sees themselves. Even though they're assigned at birth one way, they may see themselves as male, female, both, or neither.
That's got to be
Gender
very
identity.
difficult.
And so it's very complicated. So in this chapter, I really talk about these definitions, and I talk about, this is, of course, I don't do the whole community justice in really talking about trans,
Right.
but it's an introduction to, we know this community, they're at risk for suicide, HIV, AIDS, STIs, depression, unemployment. I mean, the list is long.
How sad. It makes me sad that people
Yeah.
don't at least try to understand, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it makes me sad. Go ahead.
And to that, I mean, I include trans men and women in this chapter.
Non-binary. You've got it all in here.
Yeah, to really learn about, what they experience, what they go through. I mean, medically, they have a hard time finding healthcare workers to be sensitive to, some of their issues. So it was really fun. It was probably one of my most favorite chapters, because I got to work and talk to a lot of the trans community who talk about their private experiences. And
that's
I loved
beautiful.
it.
I love
loved
that.
it. I really did.
What's the difference between non-binary and gender fluid?
Yeah. Well, non-binary, they don't identify, right?
They do not. Okay. So they're male, female, all of the above. Them, there, right?
Yeah.
I got educated in that, and I found it very, very fascinating by someone who's pretty well known as an actor, actress. They and I even said right before my interview, I said, please, if I blow it, forgive me because I'm trying so hard.
Yeah.
And they were so terrific at explaining what that is.
Yes.
But
and we're seeing it more. I mean, Billions has a non-binary character who's non-binary, and I love that. And I think, certainly the LGBTQ community wants to see themselves being in that role. And it's been fun to learn about the non-binary characters just through TV and real life people playing those parts.
beautiful. I love it. And I love that you have a chapter on this. There's so many chapters on everything in here. I wanted to touch upon, so I don't have all the time. We talked about the important stuff: masturbation and STDs, cleaning yourself, bladder and yeast infections. Let's get a little bit on infertility. I love that you had this in there. At when you're younger, you have up to 500,000 eggs that we're born with, right?
Right.
At age 35, that goes down to 25,000, and the quality drops significantly after the age of 42. Clearly, there is that clock there. But fortunately, we're able to freeze our eggs. Right?
Freezing the eggs is part of it. The Infertile Via, I was so excited to write because I feel like I have every time a couple comes in to talk about trying to get pregnant, I go through, do you know how to get pregnant? What's the best time of your cycle? And I literally talk about the best way to have sex and how to go about it. And of course, starting prenatal vitamins before actually trying and getting your medical history in line. But it just lays it out there, because the infertility hormonal cycle is another cycle that's not discussed enough.
Yeah.
So egg freezing is big now. I mean, you can't always wait for your doctor to bring it up, but age 32 to 37 is the best window.
Oh, wow. To freeze your eggs
Yeah.
should you not have a partner. I'm very much in favor of women today taking complete control of that and saying,
Yes.
I don't have a partner, but I want to be a parent. And I have quite a few friends who were single, gay and straight, and they chose to have their own biological children and froze their eggs
Yes.
and had children. And they're still single and they're raising their children just fine.
Yeah.
And I really support that a lot.
There's a lot of ways families come together now. And,
Of course, so many.
It's a really important topic. I talk about it with anyone who hits 30, I bring it up.
Wow. Is it painful? I always thought that it was like painful. They got to go in there and pull them out. No.
Not so much. I was actually a donor for a friend of mine, and I went through it way long ago, and it's not that bad. You go through the first part of a IVF cycle, and then your eggs are extracted through the vagina in a little probe that has a needle that sucks out the egg. And it can be really pleasant, and it's
especially
not so bad.
you're giving someone an opportunity to be a parent, so including yourself should you choose to wait. So that's great.
Yeah.
I don't know anything else that we have not brought up that I know. I mean, this is a tremendous book. Oh, let's talk about some of the famous people in this book. This was forwarded by Julia Orman. I know that you have excerpts from so many right in this book. Reese Witherspoon. She's a patient. Are we allowed to say that? Is that like confidential?
She's a patient. Yeah, no, I was so blessed to have people that wanted to normalize these conversations and topics. And usually in medicine, it's all about HIPAA. So it was exciting that they wanted to share some of their stories. And I felt as though, for example, when Brooke Shields could introduce the postpartum V and talk about her postpartum depression, it just normalizes that everyone, whether you have a famous vagina or not, we all go
through stuff,
through the same situation.
And then you had Jennifer Beals, right? Wasn't she talking about the heart?
Yeah. So Jennifer is huge supporter, as am I, for heart disease, women and heart disease, and I have a Heart EV chapter just because 1 in 3 will die of heart disease, and it's a very important issue close to my heart, and I represent the American Heart Association to be an advocate, because the OBGYN is often the first person to identify women at risk for heart disease.
Kim Douglas from the Home and Family, right? She's a friend of both of ours, and talking about mammograms.
Right.
Actually credits you with saving her life. So, but I love how you intersperse people that we all read about.
Yeah.
Going through the normal stuff that the rest of us all go through. Right?
Exactly. These are normal issues, but it's just talking about it, it's embracing them, it's not being embarrassed or ashamed. And women together are powerful. And it just shows more and more. More and more.
I'm feeling it. I'm really feeling the power of who we are by embracing our bodies, embracing one another for the work that we do. I really am. What about older sex? And by older, I mean older. Like over...
mature, we like to call it. Mature sex. Well, it's funny. It never stops. And the truth is, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. This is true of the...
close up or something?
Well, I have a Collapse V chapter that I do talk about this. The vagina likes to be stimulated, and when we're stimulated emotionally, we get wet. It doesn't happen as easily in menopause.
There's that coconut oil.
The coconut, right? Everyone's online right now getting it.
That's right.
But it's true. It helps with the mucosa. It helps it be nice and more supple, and it just is healthier.
Yeah, I hope that men and women, and by that I mean men and women of sort of a certain age. I know older men are taking the blue pill and they're running after younger people, but it would be quite lovely if, relationships can continue and have that really vibrant sex life that we all enjoyed as younger.
And that's where vibrators are so important for the older woman, because there's less blood flow to the clitoris and the vulva. So it's harder to have an orgasm, and why not get a good vibrator that works for you? And you can bring it into the bedroom with your partner or by yourself. It's a win-win.
Keep it going. That's what I have to say.
Absolutely.
But anything else we didn't touch upon? I mean, I can't go through the whole book, but I want to make sure that I got out there what you want to make sure people know.
and
It's She-ology, the She-quel.
Yeah, and I talk about the Confident V as sort of my first chapter of, what kind of testing should you get, things like pap smears and mammograms and colonoscopies and things that are important to
Every
do.
year for that pap smear?
It depends on your history, because if you haven't had HPV exposure and you've had normal pap smears, you can space them out to every 3 years. And after,
really?
Yeah.
Even over a certain age?
Yeah.
You can do it every. Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
How about a mammogram?
Yeah. Well, again, it's so individualized. I still do it over 40 for every year for my patient.
Now they have the kind where it's a sonogram or
Still not as good. They're not as good.
Okay, I read that it is like 60% better. So that's why, please demystify this.
Yeah. Some of them are pretty good, but there's, at least to my knowledge, there's nothing that replaces a 3D imaging of breast tissue where they're identifying calcifications. Harder to see on some of these ultrasounds. So still a fan of mammograms, and it's all about where you get them done. Try to go to a hospital accredited facility to get tested for breast cancer.
Beautiful. I loved interviewing you with this because I
thanks.
know you, and you really are perhaps the most compassionate doctor I have ever known.
Thank you.
And because I know you really care about everybody who walks in that door.
Thank you.
You really do. Let's credit Dad and Mom with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Mom and Dad, absolutely. Then just very lucky. I'm very blessed.
So what's next? Possibly this program with on Ellen Digital, right?
Yeah, we're it's in the works. We're still waiting for the go, but it's very exciting. The Vagina Revolution, the vagina conversation has to be said. It's so hard to do it on mainstream airways. The word vagina is hard to be said in on the Today Show, for example. But these this format, we can talk about it all day long. It has to be talked about, normalized. We have to embrace each other. We have to change the culture. This is the revolution we have to do.
You should be doing a weekly, or how about this, a monthly podcast, Doctor. Why don't you? And take it, you could do it from here, actually. Why don't you do that and just take it a chapter at a time?
Absolutely. Okay. Well, maybe we'll come back and we'll do it.
Yeah, that's actually a great idea now that I think about it, because there's not enough good information unless you read her books, She-ology and the She-ology sequel.
That's right. And the She-quel, was one of the 6 most life-changing wellness books. So it was validating that.
On what? On
so Prevention Magazine and Women's Health had it 6 of their most life-changing wellness books, and I thought people are paying attention.
Period. 6 of their most wellness, life-changing books. Period. That's a big deal.
And it was a big deal. Yeah, it was cool. So I was excited. So people want to talk. People want to talk about the vagina, and I'm here to do it.
Yeah. So how can people get in touch? First of all, order this on Amazon.
Yeah.
Easy to find, right?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. Both are on Amazon. I'm on Dr. Sherry R on Instagram and Facebook.
Do you answer questions? Like, do you answer your private messaging?
Well, all the time.
You do.
People email me too. So
I actually think we're onto something. I think you should do even a monthly. Whatever is going on that month in women's health. I think you'd be great.
I'd love that.
I really do.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for being here, and please pick up the book. She-ology, the sequel, and the first book as well, She-ology. I mean, I think that's a must-read as well if you haven't already.
Thank you.
By Dr. Sherry A. Ross. I hope you do. And thank you for joining us today. I've actually learned a lot myself. I enjoyed it. And our show can be seen anywhere. Well, here, Facebook Live, and then on YouTube. And then we post promos all over the place on Instagram. And then after that, you can also hear us. We're a great listen-to podcast. Apple Podcasts, yeah. I should know. iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts. We're honestly, wherever you listen and watch your podcasts, it's impossible not to find us. So, and thanks for helping us grow. We've got over, I think, 2 million now over on YouTube. I'm really proud about that.
Awesome.
So it's all because of you and you. So thank you for being here on Deborah Kobylt Live, and we'll see you next time. Bye.